2025 kickoff webinar. As you can hear, this is being recorded. We're going to use this as a resource for anyone who couldn't make it, and for anyone who would like to freshen up on some Eat, Think, Vote stuff. We're just making sure everybody is able to get in, as there's a lot of us here. While we are doing so, just a heads up. Thanks for joining. Feel free to present yourself in the chat. My name is Marissa Alexander. I'm going to be hosting and facilitating, and I'm calling in today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. If you are interested, please feel free to share a little introduction to who you are in the chat. You can share your name, where you're calling in from, and anything you might want to let us know. Just a couple of minor tech things. We have muted everybody just upon entry, just to keep it quiet to get us started off. So please remain muted if possible. But if you do want to participate in the chat, that is highly encouraged. We love to see it, and we will be keeping an eye on the chat. If you have any technical issues, just identify them in the chat, and someone on our team will try our hardest to help you out as quickly as possible. Cette présentation sera interprétée. Donc, pour ceux désirant l'écouter en français, veuillez appuyer sur le bouton en bas sous forme du globe et cliquez sur français. The panelists' presentations will be included, and I think one of us is going to maybe go back and forth for French and English. So if you are interested in just listening in English, head on over to the English channel, and then you will hear it all in English. Amazing. I believe everybody, there's still a couple more people coming in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for introducing yourself in the chat. Really excited to meet you all and be able to connect with you all. So today, purpose of this webinar is we're going to be chatting a little bit about some pressing food policy issues in this election, issues that affect all of us, from grocery prices and corporate control of the food system to investments in sustainable agriculture and more. We'll also talk about how you can take action by hosting an Eat, Think, Vote event in your community. So Eat, Think, Vote is our national campaign to make food a key issue in the coming election. Whether you're a community organization, a farmer, or just a concerned citizen, hosting an event is a very powerful way to bring candidates, community members together to discuss what's needed for a just and sustainable food system. To kick things off, let's start with a look at the major food policy priorities for this election. Before we do that, I will go to the next slide, please. If you have not introduced yourself, please let us know where are you joining from, what organization you represent, or if you're just representing yourself. If you are calling in because you're interested in hosting an ETV event, Eat, Think, Vote, ETV, and if you have ever been a part of an ETV event. We'll give folks just a couple seconds to share that, and we'll keep an eye on that chat there. Mary, a retired grandmother. Thank you for joining us, Mary. That sounds like one of the most important jobs. Ooh, people calling from all over. Hi, Letitia. Hi, Bettina. Oh, you're calling in from where I am. Oh, good. Yes, Karen, you're hosting an ETV event in Halton. So exciting. Okay, Meredith is saying she might be interested, and so we're hoping to change that by the end of this webinar. Oh, good. Yeah, you worked with the Ecology Action Center in Halifax. That's great. Hi, Kim. Ooh, I see a couple people who are in on Vancouver Island. Maybe you can collaborate. Kim and Eric, maybe you can work together. If you are interested in potentially partnering, let us know and we'll put you in touch. Ooh, lots of you Calgary folks. Hi, Cynthia. Amazing. Really, really exciting. Feel free to continue to share. And again, we'll keep an eye on the chat. We're really excited that everyone can join us, but we will switch over and I'm going to just introduce a couple people here. So we have Erin and Diana who are going to chat with you a little bit about why now, a little bit about Eat, Think, Vote. So Erin is our policy manager here at Food Secure Canada. Passionate guy. If you ever look him up, he's kind of a big deal, and we're very thankful to have him on our team. And speaking of other big deals, Diana Bronson is here to chat with us. And Diana actually used to be the executive director at Food Secure Canada. And so she has a lot of experience and knowledge, and she has actually participated and ran and hosted a lot of the Eat, Think, Vote events. And so she has a ton of experience, and we're very, very thankful to have her here. So hi, Erin. Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for joining. To kick us off, I have a question. Erin, why is now so important for Eat, Think, Vote?
Thanks, Marissa. Yes, so we know that this is going to be a very exciting election. It's already been a bit of a bumpy ride. As you all know, the Conservatives were far ahead, in great part because people were very tired of Trudeau. And this was going to be a cost of living election. In a poll in November, grocery prices were the #1 economic concern for Canadians. So that was about house prices. So this was on top of people's mind. Then Trump in November was elected, and immediately the issues of tariffs became the focus of the election. Closely after, Trudeau stepped down, and Carney was voted in as the prime minister by the Liberal Party. So it's a complete change of landscape from a few months ago, and the contest is a lot tighter than we thought. So it's no longer inevitable that the Conservatives are in the lead. However, despite the fact that the tariffs are, top of people's minds, it's still a cost of living election. It's still what most people are worried about in their day-to-day lives. And this means that there's a lot of interest from the public in the issue of food. In fact, in past Eat, Think votes, the whole challenge was to get people to care about food. And now everyone cares about food. So our job is a bit easier now. That said, we know that anything can happen in an election. There could be missteps, meltdowns, upsets of all kinds. So we do have to be careful and be on our toes. But what it's looking like is that food is going to be a very important part of this election. And so we need to take advantage of that.
As it should be. Thanks, Erin. And I think you're so correct. And it's felt like for a long time, we've been trying really hard to make food a priority. And we're in a situation where it really is now, which is exciting and important for us to take advantage. Diana, a lot of Eat, Think, Vote, a main part of this is integrating and engaging with politicians and getting them to participate in the activities. And I know that I personally have had a lot of issues with that in the past. So I'm wondering, in your experience, is it different engaging with politicians leading up to an election?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me today. I think it is really, really different in an election time. Eat, Think, Vote is in many ways a gift to politicians in the sense that it puts politicians before an audience, before an engaged citizenry. And that's what they want to do during an election campaign. They'll go door to door and hit people one at a time. But if they can get to an auditorium with 30 people or 300 people in it, that's far better and more efficient for them. So all the politicians are really looking for venues to go talk about the issues. So I do think it's an exceptional time. Eat, Think, Vote, in fact, was conceived back in the after we had been through a number of years of a Harper majority government, and we had no access to politicians, no ministers of the governing, no ministers or MPs of the governing party would even talk to us. And everything changed as soon as an election campaign came around. And I'll tell some stories about the impact of that a little bit later. I think, as we all know, the country as a whole is looking for answers regarding the Trump position on tariffs and his intent to destroy the Canadian economy. And for so many years, for 25 years or more, free trade has been the answer to every question you would ask. And it was just, reduce those tariffs, open up those markets. That's what's determined our agricultural policy agenda. And all of a sudden, those trade deals are not even worth the paper they're written on, because the rules don't matter anymore. So it's an extraordinary time. I personally don't think that civil society, no matter how strong and committed we are, can set the agenda during an election campaign. It's the politicians and the political parties who will set the agenda. So it's up to us to insert our issues into their discourse. Clearly, with the Buy Canada sort of spontaneous campaign that's erupted, it's a very ready audience to hear the message we've been carrying since before 2012, which is a message about food sovereignty that we'll get into a little bit more. I also think one of the things about Eat, Think, Vote is whether you serve light snacks or a full meal or whatever it is, to sort of break bread and discuss politics around food is a really nice way to have some constructive conversations, as opposed to the more confrontational sort of media, all candidates debate. The idea here is really to build relationships and have a constructive conversation with people who are running for office and inform them, because you don't know where they're going to end up. They might end up in cabinet, those people, and you may have had a simple conversation with them that all of a sudden is ringing in their ears. And we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So, but don't be intimidated by politicians. They actually need you more than you need them right now.
Thanks, Diana, and that's a great reminder. Erin, so despite our name at Food Secure Canada being Food Secure Canada, we talk a lot about food sovereignty. Can you tell me a little bit why now is an important time for conversations about food sovereignty?
Yeah, that's right. So food sovereignty, Food Secure Canada has, been prioritized, kind of putting food security as a term in the public sphere, but really when it comes down to it, we've been about food sovereignty, and I'm going to explain what that means. And it was really advanced in the first People's Food Policy that we helped put together. And we think that while before we were kind of stressing food security in these kinds of campaigns, we think that now is finally the time that we can use food sovereignty as a term. And so that's what we're going to try to suggest is being used during Eat, Think, Vote. So food sovereignty, what is it? It's the right of peoples and nations to democratically control their own food systems. And fundamental to that is Indigenous sovereignty, which is that Indigenous nations control and determine their own resources and culture. So food sovereignty, just from the very root of it, it connects everything from poverty to trade, the environment, health, our relationship with the land. And but that also means that it connects to all these crises that we're experiencing right now. You know, we have unheard of levels of food insecurity. We have the tariff crisis, and we also have the corporate control of the food system. Those are all food sovereignty issues. And unfortunately, right now, we're in a situation where one tweet by one guy can potentially send the Canadian food system into a spiral. And to me, that just speaks to the issue that without food sovereignty, we're not going to be able to protect ourselves from that kind of situation. So I was talking to Jen Fenning the other day, who was the former president of the National Farmers Union. She said, there's no Canadian sovereignty without food sovereignty. So if the Canadian food system was resilient to shocks and trade disputes, and if it depended more on local Canadian owned food, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. And I think people know this right now. You've probably seen the whole Buy Canadian or Made in Canada movement. People know that we need to change the food system to make it local, to protect ourselves. So we do have a lot of momentum to take advantage of right now. So at Food Secure Canada, we have been working on a set of policy ingredients for food sovereignty in Canada. We're still finalizing them, and we're going to send these out to you after the call. But there's 10. Number one on there is, just as an example, is school food. We want the parties to support and expand the school food program. Number two is trade. What we're seeing now is things like Canada's supply management coming under attack by conservatives and by Trump. So that's something we have to protect. And we also have to build a local food system as part of that. Indigenous food sovereignty is crucial in this, so that's included there. Poverty, that's number three. We need a guaranteed livable basic income, or at least a minimum income floor that supports people so that they aren't forced to rely on food banks. So these are a set of policies that we've put together that we'll send out to you. That's right. Yeah, the school meal program should be based on locally produced food, and this is something that we've included as well. That there should be a program that where government procurement for government institutions, public institutions, is tied to local food. This is something that we're talking about as well. And hopefully that will be finished soon. We're just kind of pulling all the last strings together, and you'll get that policy program.
Thank you for sharing that, Aaron. And I love the idea of ingredients. I think it's a great way to use a beautiful analogy. For folks who, like, the ingredients are not listed in any particular order, correct? So it's not in importance, it's just in policies that we think should be advocated for. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, confirming. And people don't have to use them. They just have the opportunity to. And if what they would like to work towards is not listed on there, they are free to use what they want and not what they don't, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So just to clarify, these ingredients are to be adjusted and used as a reference for you in your organization, in your event, to just basically look at and inform the kind of event. You can pick and choose from which ones are your priority. You can add your own. It's just a reference for you. And we've worked hard to make those as accessible as possible so that you can use them in your local context and modify them.
Thanks, Erin. I know we also reached out to a lot of our partners and a lot of folks who are the experts who work in those specific sectors for their feedback on that. So it isn't just coming from our little team. It really is trying to engage as many folks who do this work as possible. I think also what I'm hearing from you, Erin, a lot is that, you know, looking towards BIPOC food systems and food ways has always been the answer. And what we are doing here is just really encouraging a lot of those things like local food systems, food sovereignty, sort of ensuring that people can access the food that they're interested in accessing at a reasonable, accessible way. Amazing, super exciting. Diana, so you have experience with Eat, Think, Vote. Can you tell us what you've learned and what you think might be useful to know?
Okay, well, I'm going to tell two anecdotes, both of which involve Liberals, so please don't take that as any kind of bias. When we were doing the very first campaign in 2015, which was very low budget, and we're just kind of winging it, and we were actually overwhelmed by the response it got. I got a call from a Liberal candidate in La Prairie outside Montreal, and he said, I saw your campaign, I'd like to come and talk to you. And I'm like, oh, I don't really have time for this, but okay. So he came, and he came with one of his attachés. That man was Jean-Claude Poisson. He's a farmer, a dairy farmer, and he ran for office and he won. And he ended up being Secretary of State for Agriculture. We had a great conversation that first day. And for the whole time that he was in office, we ended up collaborating and him constantly feeding our messages into the Minister of Agriculture and into cabinet. One of the many things he did was he hosted an event called the Great Big Crunch on school food on Parliament Hill. And he did it year after year after year and gradually built up support amongst fellow MPs from all parties for a national school food program, which of course the Coalition for Healthy School Food won in last year's budget. So, you know, you never know who this person is going to end up being. Now, we'd been through, you know, sort of the dark years of the Harper government when none of us working on food policy were able to even get a meeting with low-down officials in government, let alone with ministers. So when Sunny Ways and Justin Trudeau came in 2015, it was pretty phenomenal to see this brand new cabinet that was half women, that was much younger, that had a more progressive agenda. And I was in Ottawa for a meeting, and I'm at my Bridgehead Cafe buying my coffee in the morning, and Gerald Butts walks in. Now, he was the Liberal campaign manager for that election. And I just went up to him and said, wow, brilliant job. What a campaign. That's amazing. And he said, yeah, who are you? And I said, oh, my name's Diana Bronson. I'm executive director of Food Secure Canada. We ran this campaign called Eat, Think, Vote. He goes, oh, great campaign. Eat, Think, Vote. He says, we were inundated by calls from our candidates asking what our position was on young farmers and school food and food policy. He says, we heard about it the whole time. And that was really the one of the greatest compliments we ever got on the work that we had done in Eat, Think, Vote. So it just goes to show you, he was completely invisible to me. I never knew him, but our messages are echoing up through the candidates to the Central Campaign Office from all parties saying, what are you going to do about this? And what are you going to do about supply management? What are you going to do? And then all of those candidates are learning about those issues. So in the end, even though a food policy was not in the Liberals' campaign platform, mandate letters, which define the precise mandate that ministers are going to have, which were released for the first time in 2015, those in the mandate letter of the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Health was food policy. And that was astonishing to us. And that was a direct result of Eat, Think, Vote. It may be a little bit of a result of other things, but more than anything, it was all those candidates of their own team calling in, going, what's our position on food policy? So just two little anecdotes to show that you don't know where you're gonna end up. The guy who accompanied Jean-Claude Poisson to our office that day ended up as a senior Liberal strategist. And so he had had a full briefing on everything that Food Secure Canada stood for. And he happened to agree with it. So that was good too. So those are just little anecdotes about the kind of impact we can have.
That's amazing. And I've heard that story before, and every time I do, I get goosebumps because I think that sometimes it can feel as, you know, civil society, as folks who are sort of here doing the work, that there's that big distance between us and what we're trying to do and government and people who are making decisions. And so I think that always makes me feel a lot better that somebody not only heard us, but heard us loud and clear, and it sort of changed the way that they worked. And that's, I think, the goal of Eat, Think, Vote, is to make sure our voices are the loudest and are included in these decisions. So last question for you, Diana. What advice would you give somebody who is maybe looking to host an Eat, Think, Vote event?
Yeah, well, I think some of them I've already said. Do not be intimidated. They're just politicians. They're like everybody else. They need you more than you need them in this election campaign. You want to build relationships with all of them. And of course, with the people in your community, which I'm sure you're going to do anyways. So build those relationships. Create something fun. Create something agreeable. You don't want any of the candidates walking away going, oh, that really sucked and I got surprised or ambushed or whatever. You don't want any of that. Give people a heads up on what kinds of questions you're going to be asking rather. Think about the moderator very carefully. Ideally, it's somebody in your organization, maybe your ED, or maybe someone who's a particularly good facilitator, possibly a local personality if there's someone that you trust who's on your board or who's close enough to you. Don't forget to have a sign-up sheet, capture all those names of people who come, because there may be follow-ups that you want to do. You know, you may want to have a sign-on letter, and it'd be a lot stronger if people have actually attended. And I think that's it. Have fun. It's not hard to do. I guess that's the biggest thing I would say. It's really not hard. Wade's going to talk about it, but Food Secure Canada has put together an amazing kit to make your workload really light so that this can just be integrated into what you're already doing. So I guess that's about it, Marissa.
Thanks, Diana. And, you know, thanks for paving the way for us to be able to continue to do this amazing campaign, because I think you definitely were in the trenches for the hard parts, and it's nice to be able to continue such an empowering campaign. And thank you, Erin. I know you're off camera, but thank you for sharing as well. As Diana mentioned, we're going to transition over to chat a little bit about what does it look like to host an Eat, Think, Vote event. One thing we do have there on the next slide is if you're interested and you have held an Eat, Think, Vote event before and you have any experiences, positive experiences you want to share in the chat, feel free to do that. And any of the questions that you have, we will come back to and give space for you to ask any questions either in the chat or straight to Diana and or Erin after Wade's done his logistics presentation. So if you want to put it in the chat now so you don't forget, fabulous. We will make sure to capture those and ask them at the end. So I'm going to hand it over to Wade. You're going to talk a little bit about the logistics around hosting an Eat, Think, Vote event. I might chime in with any questions or clarifications I have, and I will keep an eye on the chat if anyone has any specific questions about what you're talking about, so that we can answer them as they come up or to make sure that they don't get lost. So thanks, and hi, Wade.
Thank you, Marissa. So yeah, I'm happy to speak about hosting an Eat, Think, Vote event, having been on both sides of the campaign. As both now I'm an organizer of the national campaign, but I was also an organizational host at one point. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. As mentioned, I will be in the interest of linguistic parity, I will be switching back and forth between English and French. So if you would like to hear this in English, please change the channel to the English channel on the interpretation icon, likewise with French. So we're happy to have so many people that are showing an interest in this campaign. This webinar will go over some details, but it won't be all of the information. There is a lot of information available on our website, so I encourage you to look those up on eatthinkvote.ca and also on je mange donc je vote.ca. And if, despite having looked over those documents and listening to this webinar, you still have some questions, please don't hesitate to reach out for support. We are always there to help, and we just want everyone to succeed in their events. So, pourquoi est-ce qu'on organise un événement Je mange donc je vote? C'est une vraiment bonne façon d'établir des liens avec les candidats et les partis politiques, surtout pour les groupes et les organismes qui visent à faire du plaidoyer au long terme. Les relations que vous entamez avec les candidats dans cette élection vont continuer avec les personnes qui sont des députés fédéraux. Donc, c'est très important dans cette campagne électorale, quand les candidats, les politiciens sont à l'écoute, d'avoir ces conversations. C'est aussi une bonne façon de mettre en valeur les politiques alimentaires. Et pour plusieurs candidats, un tel événement est leur première rencontre significative avec ce type d'enjeu. Pour ceux qui connaissent les politiciens, on sait qu'ils ne sont pas des experts sur toutes les choses sur lesquelles ils font des décisions. Donc, c'est à nous de leur expliquer ce qui est important dans le monde, dans le monde de l'alimentation. Et c'est vraiment le moment propice pour avoir l'attention des candidats. Maintenant, on est en pleine campagne. Il n'y a personne qui est officiellement un député. Donc, tout le monde est à l'écoute de leur communauté qui vont les élire au Parlement. So, what is an Eat, Think, Vote event? It's basically, in its purest form, it's just a way of engaging candidates and citizens on food policy issues at events hosted in your community. It's a way to bring candidates and citizens together to just talk about these in a way that could be as formal or as informal as you like. The time is now. Election was just called on Sunday, and we have a little under 5 weeks before Election Day. So as much as we try to prepare for an election in our parliamentary system, they can be called at any moment, and this is the moment, and so we're having to move quickly. So, and then the how is please stay tuned, and we'll talk about that a bit more. But again, there are plenty of resources on our website.
Wait, before you move along, there's a question in the chat about the who. Basically, somebody is asking who qualifies as a host for the Eat, Think, Vote. Does it have to be an NGO? It can't be a government staff. Is that correct? Could you clarify?
Yep. So the only restriction that we have is that the host cannot be a third party, and a third party is what is the definition is the definition of Elections Canada, and you can look on the Elections Canada website to tell you what that means. But basically, so far as you are conducting this event in an impartial and nonpartisan way, it can be an organization, a nonprofit organization, a group of citizens. But so long as the event is, again, nonpartisan, you're not promoting specific candidates. Basically, any group of people can host an event.
You're saying that retired grandmas can absolutely host an event in their living room if they really wanted. I think this also does sort of lead into the other question we had around if it would be problematic to have a candidate donate funds to pay for food or a venue. Yes, it would. And Aaron also did just share the concepts of like third party and some of the election rules that clarify that, but that is also in our campaign toolkit if you are interested in learning a little bit more about if you might be doing something that makes you nonpartisan or makes you partisan.
Right,
Thanks,
and
Ian.
we will have a question and answer session at the end. So if you have any questions that come up, please put them in the chat and we'll collect them and we should be able to answer them, have time to answer them all at the end. So to give, just to speak briefly about my own experience with Eat Think Vote, this is an example of an event that was held in Iqaluit in my role as a director of the Iqaluit Community Food Center there. As you can see, we got some media attention. The media came and did a write-up about it. All of the major political, all the major parties were in attendance there. So we had in that writing, the only parties of importance were the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, and the NDPs. And it was a really lively event, well attended. You could see by the photos that it was more or less wall to wall. There was some people standing up at the back, and it was also a significant in that it changed, like after that election, the color of the map changed. So the party representing that riding had changed during that election. You know, I can't necessarily say that it was thanks to an event like this, but it was an example of an all candidate. There was only, in that writing, there was only this was one of 2 all candidates events. So some writings, there might not even be a single all candidates event. So it's these kinds of events are really important because it's a way to focus conversations outside of official statements and media releases from the parties and the candidates themselves. Donc, voici une liste des tâches à faire pour organiser un événement de Je mange donc je vote. Je vais parler sur toutes ces tâches ici plus tard, mais juste en bref, c'est d'abord vous allez rejoindre la communauté, même ceux qui normalement ne fréquentent pas votre organisme, si vous êtes un organisme communautaire. Vous allez former une équipe qui va organiser l'événement. Vous allez aussi concevoir le type d'événement que vous aimeriez avoir, fixer une date et lieu. On n'a pas beaucoup de temps avant l'élection, donc c'est le temps de choisir un lieu et une date. Vous allez aussi identifier les enjeux d'importance pour votre communauté. Donc, il y a plusieurs enjeux majeurs dans l'alimentation, sur la politique de l'alimentation, mais vous pouvez choisir parmi eux pour ce qui est important pour votre communauté. Ça change, et ça change surtout depuis où vous vous situez. Vous allez aussi inviter les candidats dans votre circonscription. Vous allez faire la promotion de l'événement et vous allez animer l'événement d'une façon joviale et démocratique. Et après l'événement, après tout a eu fin, vous allez nous faire un compte rendu très bref pour parler de votre expérience. We also have set up a WhatsApp group a WhatsApp community, it's called, to keep up to date on the Eat Think Vote campaign. This is not mandatory, but it is recommended if you want to have a place where you can ask questions, share updates, share content, and connect with like-minded groups who are also working on their own Eat Think Vote events. Donc, d'abord, il vous faut former une équipe. S'il y a plusieurs groupes dans la même circonscription électorale, il serait utile de travailler ensemble au lieu de faire de la concurrence. Et donc, si nous trouver s'il y a des doublons dans les conscriptions, on va faciliter les connexions entre les groupes qui aimeraient qui ont organisé un événement dans cette circonscription-là. Mais on vous encourage de trouver des autres partenaires pour aider avec l'organisation de cet événement. So there are a lot of questions with how you what kind of event you will hold, and you know, as Diana was saying, this should be fun. This should be creative. It can take the form of a really formal debate, or it can be something entirely different. So these are all questions for you to answer. But some of the questions that will come up, and there's more in the resources. But like, think about, will you be working with any partners? Are you going to host this on your own? Will this be in person or virtual? We strongly recommend in-person events. Those are ones that seem to get a lot more engagement. We have had virtual events especially for the 2021 election, but they were not very popular due to Zoom, I would say Zoom fatigue. But you know, if circumstances prevent you from having an in-person event, that is still an option. Are you providing food, and what kind? We'll talk about that a bit later. Indoors or outdoors? We are, I guess we can say we are thankful that we're having an election event in the late spring where the weather might be nice in your area. So there's also the possibility of having an outdoor event, and that has been done in the past. How many people do you anticipate? Is this going to be, you know, what kind of space will you need to accommodate everybody? And then other things like, will you be providing other information, and what other resources and will you have at the event? La nourriture peut servir comme un catalyseur important pour les conversations. C'est dans le nom de la campagne, Je mange donc je vote. Donc, si vous avez l'espace et le budget pour offrir de la nourriture, ce serait un moyen très chaleureux d'accueillir la communauté, et ça prépare aussi le terrain pour les conversations sur l'alimentation qui vont suivre. Mais il faut dire que cependant, ce n'est pas absolument nécessaire. Donc, si ce n'est pas dans votre budget ou dans l'espace que vous avez trouvé que ce soit possible d'offrir de la nourriture, ce n'est pas absolument nécessaire, mais on le recommande fortement. Et vous pouvez toujours demander aux entreprises locales s'ils peuvent vous dépanner sur ce que vous offrez. Peut-être il y a comme un restaurant ou un service de traiteur qui peut vous aider avec ça. So, you might benefit from being a sort of, like, maybe you're an organization that already has an event space. So, for example, when I hosted an event, it was in our community food center where we did food services. So we just converted the space for the evening for an evening vote event. And it was fairly easy, but you know, you might be in a situation where you have to find a separate venue and potentially rent a separate space. So yeah, just identify what your needs are. What kind of things we need? Do you need kitchen? It's always nice to have accessible spaces as much as possible. So make sure that's a consideration. And don't be afraid to ask for in-kind contributions for space. So if you can spell out to the if you are having to find a separate space, maybe ask the owners if they would be willing to contribute this as an in-kind democratic engagement contribution, because I think that if you spell out what the kind of event that you're holding, I think a lot of landlords would be really open to supporting that. And yeah, also make sure that you have the right kind of audio video capabilities in that space, because that will be important. Mais vous devez très vite choisir la date et l'heure, parce que puisqu'on est dans pleine campagne électorale depuis ce dimanche, vous avez d'ici jusqu'au 27 avril pour avoir l'événement. Mais je dirais que les événements les dates juste avant l'élection, je ne pense pas que les candidats seront disponibles. Donc, au milieu du mois d'avril serait mieux. Donc, identifiez la date et l'heure qui va maximiser la participation de votre communauté. essayez autant que possible d'accordez-vous assez de temps pour organiser l'événement, mais aussi pour inviter vos candidats. Préférablement, c'est au moins 2 semaines d'avance pour les invitations. So when identifying the issues, I think that you know your community is best and what's important to them. Maybe you live in an agricultural community, maybe you live in an Indigenous community. We will have policy resources and backgrounders available on our website, and we will also be following up with platform analyses when the major political parties start to put those out. So please make use of those. The theme of of our campaign this year is food sovereignty. There are a lot of sub-themes within that, but that is the message that we're trying to get across, that we need to have control over our own local food systems. Mais quand il faut dire que quand vous invitez les candidats des différents partis, c'est une campagne non partisane, mais toutefois, pendant les plus récentes élections partielles, nous avons eu des douzaines de candidats dans une seule conscription. Il y a un groupe qui s'appelle The Longest Ballot Committee qui essaie de protester contre la façon dont nos députés sont élus. On ne vous suggère pas d'inviter toutes ces personnes qui sont inscrites dans une circonscription. Vous pouvez avoir un événement qui est non partisan, mais où vous invitez seulement les représentants des partis principaux, ainsi que les candidats indépendants qui ont une chance réelle à être élus. Vous pouvez, il y a plein d'exemples de lettres et d'autres ressources dans notre guide pour faciliter les invitations aux candidats. Donc, vous trouvez tout ça sur notre site. So when you're inviting the candidates, please try to give at least 2 weeks notice, as I said. It is election season, so the candidates will be busy. Be really clear about what your event is about. Don't make it seem intimidating. Don't make it seem like they're going to get grilled on issues. We want them they don't have an obligation to attend, so we want to make it seem warm and inviting. And don't forget to, after the event is all said and done, to follow up with these candidates. And this is about the building the relationship with people who may or may not, but you never know, may represent us in Parliament. So fostering those relationships early and maintaining those is key in this work. Donc, vous pouvez faire la promotion de votre événement parmi plusieurs façons. La plus simple, c'est surtout les réseaux sociaux, si vous avez des infolettres, ou même juste par bouche à l'oreille. Et aussi, n'hésitez pas de contacter les médias traditionnels tels que la radio, la télévision, les journalistes, les journaux locaux. Et nous avons, il y a des ressources pour vous guider sur comment faire la promotion sur notre site, même si vous avez des questions sur ça, n'hésitez pas à demander à notre équipe. And then with the event facilitation, this is, this is very important. You need to pick somebody who's really good at facilitating and is able to direct the conversation. Don't pick a boring person like me. Be impartial. Make sure that, like, when you are asking questions or directing conversations, that you are not showing a preference for one candidate or party over another. You can certainly have a preference over certain policies, but you cannot have a preference for a certain candidate. So yeah, make use of our resources. We have quite a few on the facilitation. Allow for enough time to have a healthy question and answer between the candidates and the community. make sure that you have one or more note takers there. And you also might consider even recording or live streaming your event so that people who don't attend can still have the access to that information. So when I've hosted this event in the past, at times I've both recorded the audio and then put it up online on our website after the event, but I've also had it live streamed over Facebook as well. Il y a plusieurs valeurs à laquelle on aimerait que vous respectez. Comme j'avais dit, les conversations devraient être axées sur les enjeux alimentaires et les interconnexions. On parle sur des politiques et pas des candidats et des partis. Donc, vérifier faites attention que les conversations sont toujours d'une manière impartiale. Soyez respectueux de tous les participants, bien sûr, même si vous ne partagez pas les mêmes valeurs. Vous pouvez, on suggère que ces événements soient ouverts au public autant que possible. Je sais qu'il y a des moments que votre population cible serait peut-être pas le public au large, mais on aimerait que autant de personnes possibles que peuvent bénéficier de ce type d'événement. Et j'ai dit avant que les événements ne doivent pas être organisés par un tiers. Et vous pouvez vous renseigner sur la définition d'un tiers sur le site des élections au Canada, mais si vous organisez un événement impartial, je ne pense pas qu'il y aura un problème. And after the event is all said and done, you will be reporting back to us. Please, we encourage you to take gather as much information from the event as possible. You might want to have participants maybe sign an agreement that allows for the use of their photos and videos if you feel that's necessary. Collect as much contact info from participants as you can, as much as you're comfortable with, and with their permission, such as names and emails. And yeah, we will take that information and highlight it on our website after the event. Et il existe plusieurs ressources sur notre site jemangedoncjevote.ca, eatthinkvote.ca. Mais si vous avez toujours des questions sur la campagne, n'hésitez pas de contacter notre équipe. On est là pour vous aider. And if you have the resources to support us financially, we would certainly welcome any support via our website. There's a button on the website that links you to our fundraising campaign. So this can't take place without staff time and other expenses. So please consider donating if you can. That about wraps it up for me. I would like to open it up to questions from anybody who has them. We can entertain questions in the chat. I think it's also possible for people to raise their hands and we can unmute you, but yeah, please let me know if that's not the case.
Thanks, Wade. I might actually see if Diana and Aaron are amenable to getting back on camera. Yeah, and then can we stop sharing so people have big video of our faces? A lot of the questions that were asked in the chat were already kind of answered, but I might just reiterate a couple things. There was some stuff around what does it look like to be, a third party, and as mentioned in the chat, Aaron shared some links, and there is a lot of information on our website if at any point you are concerned that you might be crossing over into that, no longer nonpartisan area. You also spoke to this, Wade, around the timing, recognizing that we have about a month and that might feel quite rushed, and the politicians might be the candidates might be quite busy. Somebody had said, is having an event on the 26th of April like too tight? And I think in the chat was kind of answered like, it's a possibility, especially if you already have an audience. The challenge you might have is getting the candidates there. So I think if you are hoping to change an event that is sort of that close to the election, then lock in your candidates as soon as possible so that you know that they will be there. And then one of the questions was around the making it a survey. Somebody asked, does the Eat Think Vote event have to be an event, or could it be some sort of all candidate survey? And I know, Aaron, you had answered that in the chat, but do you want to just reiterate that for folks who maybe didn't catch it in the chat?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's an issue to do a survey of candidates, and usually or in the past, FSC has done that ourselves on the federal level for the parties. Also, just keep in mind, Eat Think Vote, if you have limited capacity, it doesn't have to be big. It can just be people in a living room. So if that's your limitation, don't be too afraid of it. And just to note, this is important information. It's not that you were suggesting you do this. It's important not to do a survey of participants on their voting intention. You might be tempted to do that, at the end of the event, but that can be considered to be activity that's not eligible during an election period, aside from done by third parties.
Thanks, Aaron. There was also a question, which I think is really great to highlight, around, is there any thought of inviting local food producers to these events? This individual lives in a rural area and is a farmer, but they think that in ridings where agricultural primary production occurs, that's one thing that should definitely be happening. Diana, you answered that in the chat, but I want to just give you the platform to answer that again so that we can all hear it.
The most trusted people to lobby politicians are farmers. Honestly, that's so. Yes, 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 yes. We should almost have make sure there's some farmer or food producer in every event, but not to make that a criteria. But that's great. If you get a farmer to moderate the event, that would be amazing. I've just seen it time and time again. If you go to Parliament Hill with a farmer, no one's going to talk to me because I'm not a farmer.
That's helpful. Thank you. There was also a little bit of questions around that where someone had mentioned that they had done that in the past and the farmers had spoken to some of the issues, and there was a bit of confusion of, are we having speeches? Is it just questions? And I think what we strongly suggest for an Eat Think Vote event is to have, if someone wants to ask a question specifically, someone like a farmer in the area, perhaps they can sort of lead their question with some of the information, and that takes away from everyone feeling like they're being talked at, but it does sort of like inform the information. And so being able to say, as a farmer, these are some of the issues, and then asking your question can kind of make that conversation more robust.
Maybe just a comment on
please.
that. Like, one way to do it would be to say to the candidates, okay, you each get 2 minutes to lay out your vision around these things. You don't want to give them 10 minutes each and have 40 minutes go by before anybody else gets to ask anything. You really want to have an interactive event. So I think it's great to script a few questions to pinpoint people in your community, say the farmer or the food bank worker or whoever, to speak directly from their experience and to ask their questions that you've decided on. But also there should be a forum for anybody. This is just a standard democratic citizens debate, and anybody can get up and ask anything. And if someone's way out of line, then it's up to the moderator to shut them down. But you really want to participate and empower your community, to go after these politicians who may end up as ministers. So you may just have a nice little conversation with someone, but they're going to end up in cabinet and they're going to be in a decision-making role. And you're going to be able to say, remember that day we had to talk about this? What are you going to do about that now?
Thank you. That's a good clarification. And also like a good reminder of, we don't necessarily, people aren't coming to these events to hear politicians speak more and more and more. They want to really engage and bring those issues up. So picking facilitator or moderator who is not uncomfortable with shutting people down when they are talking too long, I think is key. Another question we have is, will we be promoting ETV events through FSC's platforms? Yes, and I'm sorry if that was not clear in our presentation. I think that is one of the benefits of having an Eat, Think, Vote event, is that we have our national audience and platform to be able to advertise that. And so on our website, if you want to go and explore the Eat, Think, Vote website, there is an opportunity to register your event, and it comes up on sort of like a joint calendar. So anybody who is looking to go to an event can go and search by region, and they will be able to find your event. We will also be sharing any media, any information, anything that you would like us to amplify. We're happy to do that, because the goal of these campaigns is really to get people involved. And if we can use our voice to do that, ideal. I'm not seeing any hands up. Is anyone?
There is a
Does
hand up.
anyone? Okay, good. Can you?
Julia, do you want to go ahead? I'll just ask you to unmute.
Hello. Oh, no video. That's okay. Just wanted to share, I went to a Young Agrarians policy jam like last weekend, I believe it was, and they had this awesome facilitation strategy. So I wanted to share it with the group because I thought it was a great way of kind of getting people to feel a bit more human in oftentimes those panel discussions that are like expert and we are on the other side of that. And it was called a fishbowl or spiral facilitation method, where you have a group of people sitting in that outer circle, and then there's a circle of chairs on the inside. And it's kind of easier to explain with video, but I'm doing hand motions, so you cannot see. But anyways, people are sitting on the middle, and I'm thinking, there you go. Thank you, Marissa. The people sitting on the middle, if those are where the politicians are, you give them 2 minutes, and then basically everyone on the outer ring is looking inwards, and the active listeners are just as much a part of the conversation and a valued member of it. And then if you feel compelled to ask a question, you go up and sit in the ring with the politicians there, and it's more of like a approachable way of having a dialogue. So just wanted to throw that out there as another creative option that might even have more of a impact and approachable nature for the everyday person to join in.
Thanks, Julia, and I hope my hand motions were sufficient. I have done, fishbowl discussions before, and I love them. I think it's a great idea. I think also we don't need to have people in like a panel, right? They can be sitting at tables. They can be sitting in a large circle. Like, I think that it's depending on the type of event you're having. Obviously, if there's a lot of people and you want people to be able to see the candidates, then sure, having them maybe on some sort of stage or up high would be helpful. But if you have a smaller group and you can have everyone in a circle of chairs or at different tables where people can interact, I think that's also an option. And it really is up to you and your event. Also, did you see Wade at the Young Agrarians? Go ahead, Diana.
I attended an event at the NDG Food Depot actually a number of years ago, and what they did was they just had tables set up with like 6 or 8 people at each table, and they made the politicians go one by one around to each table. So you got to engage directly with the Conservative, Liberal, etc. candidate. So that was just an interest. Anything is possible. That's the thing. You've got to adapt it to what you need in your community.
I can't see the hands. Are there other hands up? Yes, Cynthia, like speed dating, but politicians. I also, there's another question that I think, again, Aaron, you answered in the chat, but somebody was just asking around about, is there an existing resource that succinctly breaks down the levels of government and their responsibilities or portfolios for food systems, basic income, etc. Aaron, I think you answered that that'd be a great idea in the chat. Did you want to expand on that at all, or?
No, I just think that's a great idea, and maybe we can create that resource for you if you think if other people would like to see that as well. We can put that together.
We'll put a pin in it. I have a board of multiple pins that we're coming back to, so we'll do it. Hi, Eric. I see you have your hand up. Please go ahead. I think we will just ask you to unmute. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa. Nice to see you all here. Yeah, so I'm on the Lekwungen and Saanich territories, so South Vancouver Island, and there's is it was really cool last night. I could easily email 10 people that I think we're, you know, indirectly connected through food, basic income food work. So we basically, there's a bunch of us that are food practitioners and educators. So we take essentially rescued local food from farmers and elsewhere, and we use it as a way to connect people in our communities, and then we feed people in an equitable way. So it's good work being done, but it also reveals so many interconnections. So food brings everyone and everything together, which is positive. And right now it's like front of, priority for all people on Tyrrell End. However, it also opens the door to a really big topic, right? An array of topics. So yeah, so Aaron, thanks for agreeing to looking at a resource. So what I'm really thinking is like a breakdown, like, municipal, provincial, federal, indigenous, influence and control of issues, but then also like political parties, maybe some successes and some stretches for each, and then also like local candidates versus federal, just to look at some patterns and themes. So I mean, this is a big group, and I know everyone's coming from different places, but I don't know if like a shared Google document where people can just kind of plug away, like, just asset mapping. But I do think time is coming fast. And what I want to avoid is starting an event with a lot of like, well, that's not what we deal with, or well, that's not our jurisdiction, or you know what, we're doing that. And so, and also could be great to share that in a succinct way, even an infographic with attendees. And that could be coast to coast to coast. But yeah, I mean, we're all have a lot on our plates, but I just love this idea of community of practice asset mapping versus unless you have like a grad student like myself that could do it quickly. But thanks for hosting this. And I will get back to you all shortly after I take a first run of the event planning guide. But yeah, thanks for the time.
Thanks, Eric. And yeah, looking forward to hearing back about your event and how it goes. But yeah, absolutely agree. I think that we want to make sure that we're not, everyone's not showing up to the event and asking about things that these candidates don't necessarily have positions on because it's not really within their jurisdiction. So I think that that's a great point, and something that we can absolutely work towards providing some sort of resource that can be shared out to anyone who's attending, or even reiterated. And I think that might be in our event guide, reiterated sort of at the beginning around like, these are the types of things that maybe are not within their jurisdiction. So be mindful of that. Does anyone want to add anything to that before we move on to the next question, Diana?
Well, I do think it would be great to have that just that breakdown, particularly federal and provincial. So for example, there's no point asking a question on minimum wage, or when are you going to put up the minimum wage, because that's not a federal responsibility. Agriculture and environment are both joint responsibilities. So there's roles for both governments there. But I think we could come up with a maybe 2-pager on that fairly quickly. That would just be a guide so that you don't go after the wrong issue.
There's a question about if you have, for example, if you're in a like this somebody from who has a university where students are coming from all over the city, whether it makes more sense to have candidates from across a bunch of different districts in that city, or if it just makes sense to have candidates from the riding that the university is in. I would I would suggest strongly that it be sort of a local electoral district event, because it can, if you're inviting candidates from a bunch of different districts, and get confusing really quickly. And you could end up also with a situation where you have, 4 Liberal candidates and not a single and Conservative candidate or something. I have actually, in adapting this campaign for a territorial election in Nunavut, we did have an event where we invited candidates from 4 of the 4 ridings, territorial ridings in the city of Iqaluit, which was great, but it meant that there was about 12 or 16 people on the stage. So it didn't really, not everybody had a lot of time to speak, and it can get pretty chaotic. So as much as possible within a single electoral district would be best.
Thanks, Wade. I was just gonna say that Anna, thanks Anna to add into the chat that just referencing this new document, we also want to note that the resources that FSC has created and developed within our event guide are include key asks and questions to candidates that are specifically within federal jurisdiction. So it's a good foundation to build your own priorities, is recognizing that we have created them to be federal. Sorry, go ahead, Diana.
Just on the, like a couple of districts together, and then there's a question here from Julia, is the goal to have one rep from each party? I would say yes. And it's okay if in, say, an urban situation, you end up covering 2 ridings, but it's 1 rep per party. And that might be easier to actually get them. But, ideally, like Wade said, it would be 1 Eat, Think, Vote event per riding. But, sometimes it just doesn't break down that way. And they say, well, I can send my candidate from the neighboring riding to represent, say, the NDP or the Bloc or one of the smaller parties. And that's okay. That's okay. I think what we want is, the very first time we did this, actually in 2012, we had one candidate from 1 party. It was Carolyn Bennett, who subsequently became minister, but she was the only one who showed up in 2012 when we tried this, and not during an election campaign. It was just an all-party debate with 1 Liberal. So, it gave her a platform. If only 2 parties show up, they have a great platform.
Not a very interesting debate with 1 person, but great platform, great opportunity to engage. I think we have answered most of the questions in the chat. Is there any other questions? Does anyone have their hand up or anything that we missed? Julia's asking that they're hosting an event in a riding where many of them don't live because they're a citywide youth council. How would you suggest us target our candidate selection? Anyone want to answer that? And then Tina, I do see that you have your hand up, so we'll go to you next. But first, Aaron, Diana, Wade.
I mean, I would say if in the absence of any other organizers in other ridings doing an event, you could consider one where you have candidates from multiple ridings, just so that everybody, you'd have a forum for candidates in multiple ridings where people might be living. But as I was saying, it might get a bit unruly if you have too many people. But I mean, maybe that's a good problem to have.
Also, where you hold physically the event, if it's in a university auditorium, that university auditorium is in a certain riding, then go after those ridings. So it might be partially determined by where it is. These are boots on the ground moments, right? These politicians are walking door to door. They're mapping everything. So definitely, there's not much of an incentive for a candidate from another riding to go participate in a debate in the riding next door when they could be knocking on doors and getting votes in their own riding. So, you might have a couple of ridings involved, but I think ideally it's the event takes place in a riding and the politicians are from that riding.
Thank you. Hi, Tina, please go ahead. I'm just going to ask you to unmute here.
Hi, I was just wondering if it would be all right to mention this is my first time attending one of these. But just to keep in mind, people of all ages and health, i.e., a lot of people don't have teeth, right? So raisins, anything chewy, nuts, pizza that may be really convenient for people to get. People, they can't see that. So just to keep that in mind when thinking about food.
Thanks, Tina. Your sound was a little off, but I think what I heard was that just for accessibility, when people are planning their events, being mindful of folks who maybe have like any dysphagia, chewing issues, the challenges with eating. So maybe don't go for the easy foods, or at least have options for folks. Yeah? Fabulous. Thanks, Tina. And thank you for that reminder. We do have a piece in our event guide around like some other things to consider when it comes to accessibility, but I don't think that was in that. So thank you for bringing that up, Tina. Does anyone else have any other questions or any notes? We did see that somebody asked for this recording. Yes, we will absolutely make this available so people can come back to this, rewatch it, or skip to the interesting parts. Just kidding. It's all interesting. Don't see any hands up, and I don't see any questions. I'll give it a couple more seconds in case there's any last minute concerns. Otherwise, we might wrap this up so this recording is not unruly. Okay, good. Yeah, it
We're
looks
always
like,
available by email,
yes.
so feel free to reach out.
Yeah. And as soon as you register for an event on the Eat, Think, Vote platform, even if you don't have a specific date or a location or anything, but you just register and say, I want to do this at some point, everything else is TBD. Our team is aware of you. We can reach out and connect, and you immediately have access to, I mean, all the resources are already available, but we'll make sure that you feel supported as best as possible.
I would also add, you know, if you join the WhatsApp, you can ask questions and we'll be available and there to answer, and you can also source the community on the WhatsApp for help and support.
Absolutely. I think the benefit of FSC is that we do have a wide spread and wide reach, which means that people don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you have a question or a concern about something, chances are good that somebody else has either dealt with it or is feeling the same thing. And so I think being able to rely on our partners, colleagues, sisters, friends all across the country is one of the biggest benefits of being part of a community like Food Secure Canada's. Any last closing comments from our group here before we head out? Erin has shared the WhatsApp link. Thank you so much. If anyone knows anyone who's really passionate about democracy and food who wants to maybe financially support FSC, please share that. That would also be very helpful for us to be able to keep doing what we're doing. Okay. I think that's good. I want to thank Diana, Erin, Wade for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and your time. And thank you to everyone who joined live, and for any of you who are watching this and recording, and for anyone who is going to support by hosting an Eat, Think, Vote event, or even just amplifying or attending. This is extremely important, and we're very, very honored that you are potentially taking the time to participate. So thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you all soon.